Hi guys, today I want to talk about my favorite books of 2023. So, I read so many good books last year. It was actually wild. I don't think I've had such a good reading year in a long time. I had so many books between the 4 and 5 star range. So, I was eating good. I was eating good. But a lot of those books that I rated in that range were romance books. I really entered my romance girly era last year. I discovered sports romance and cowboy romance. It just worked for me and I was like, wow, this is really good. But for me to say a book is in the favorites of the 2023 year, I feel like I have to have thought about it a lot since reading it, or had engaged in a lot of discourse about it that made me very excited about the book, like even after reading it. So despite reading 70 books, or more than 70 books last year, I only have 5 books to say that were my favorites. And 4 of those 5 books were in a series. But anyways, first I would like to talk about the fact that Elsie Silver, you write some good books. Heartless, Reckless, those were bangers. Those were bangers. But did I read any other ones in that series? No. I read Hopeless. I didn't like it. So anyways, also honorable mention to Caught Up by Liz Tom Ford. The banter, the caring characters, the dynamic. It was so good. It was so good. But they're just not my favorites of the year. They're just good books I've read. So the first book that I want to talk about that's not part of the series is, of course, needing no introduction, Babel. So Babel, of course, set off a hunger in the girlies on BookTube for dark academia. So many videos were inspired by this book here. I have not seen such an effect. But you know what? That's just the R of Kuang power. She is an amazing writer. Like this book, she's a pretty thick girly. Like she's coming up on close to 540 pages. And her font is pretty small. It's pretty small. You know, it's a lot of pages. But did I feel the drag at all? Did I feel like, wow, I can't wait for this book to be over. This is getting so long, so redundant. No, I didn't. Because R of Kuang, she put her whole soul into this book. I can feel it. Because it's just, literally who else could make having footnotes work? I literally can't think of a single author where having footnotes wouldn't be pretentious, but it just works so well. It added to the ambience of the story. It created a richer world. I just feel like this is what footnotes are supposed to do. Like, especially in a fiction book. Like, you would think, why does there need to be footnotes? Or that's what I thought, personally. But it was so good. It was so good. So basically, if you have not heard of Babel, which I highly think is improbable, but if you haven't, Babel follows the journey of Robin Swift, who becomes an orphan during the 1928 cholera outbreak in Canton, where he's rescued by a mysterious stranger, Professor Lavelle, and rigorously tutored in ancient Greek, Latin, and Chinese in hopes of entering into the Royal Institution of Translation, otherwise known as Babel, where the students are trained in silverworking, art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation, which has allowed Britain to rise to become an unparalleled superpower in the world, which has of course fueled the Empire's quest for colonization. In arriving at the institution for translation, Robin starts to realize that this act of translation might cause him to have to betray his homeland, and with tensions rising between the Empire and them trying to pursue an unjust war against China through the use of opium, he has to reconcile if he would like to continue to be complicit or fight against the empire that's raised him. So I really loved this book. I thought it was very well written, as I said. R of Kuang has such a way of writing and integrating the footnotes into her work, and I thought it was exquisite, incredible. I think the characters were so well developed. I think at points there was a little bit of a caricaturization, but I don't think this book is supposed to be a super nuanced where you need to really dig deep to get the messages out and really study it and research into it. I think the messaging is quite clear. You know, you can dig deep into it and get more, but for the average person that just picks this up, you're gonna get an amazing story out of it. As I was saying, so the characters are very well developed. I think that it was quite interesting to see all the different countries that they were coming from and their different experiences based on their ethnicity, their gender, and how they're interacting in this colonized world, how they perceive things, and what leads them to make those decisions during this book. And it all makes sense perfectly. It's never like they're acting out of character. I think their character arc was very well done. I think everything was just very gradual, as in like their character doesn't suddenly change. They are very gradually encountering things, and then that's causing them to change, and then encountering new information that's causing them to change. They're having self-doubt. They're very real characters. They seem believable. They're interacting in the world in a believable way. So again, I could ramble on about this book forever, but definitely if you have not read this book, definitely check it out. It's definitely worth the read. That's all I'm gonna say. It's definitely worth the read. This was my 1 5-star read that I will be discussing. The other 4 books are all part of a series, and I didn't give any of them a 5-star. They're all 4.75 or 4.5. So that's why I put this first. My star book. So the next 4 books, I do not own them. I read them on Kindle, and it's The Boys of Tommen. So if you are on BookTube, you have certainly heard of Destiny Sidwell, and she mentioned it, and I was like, let me check out the first book. What can it hurt? What can it hurt? And it can hurt my heart. I would recommend you let it hurt yours too. It was so good. So my little disclaimer first is that these books are supposed to take place in 2005. So there is a little bit of... There is some language in there that is not necessarily the... It's very 2005. They speak like they're in 2005. And while I don't love that, I think the story is more deep than that. And this book is more about the story than the writing, in my opinion. The writing could use some editing. Love you, Chloe Walsh. But you need an editor. And I hope that the new editions that are coming out soon, they got edited. Because, girl. But I love these books. I think all of them, again, like I said, 4.75 or 4.5, they were elite. They were so good. So the first book in that series, I rated 4.75. So it's Binding 13, and then Keeping 13, I rated that 4.75. So the first 2 books in this series, we follow Shannon. She is the victim of severe bullying in her school. But coupled with her bullying, she's also suffering from severe abuse at home. So she's being physically and emotionally abused by her parents. And overall, she's just not in a healthy situation. And I think Chloe Walsh handled the topic and the subject matter so well that it didn't feel like... The way she depicted it, you're getting such funny, lighthearted moments when she's with her friends, when she's with her siblings, and then that really just ties in a more full picture. Because when someone's going through abuse and going through all of these terrible situations, it's not like everything is all dark and there's no happiness at all. So I think balancing those moments of light in these incredibly, incredibly dark situation was perfect. But I think you need an editor. There's some things just don't need to be said. And then after that, we have Saving and Redeeming 6. So I rated Saving 6 4.5 and then Redeeming 4.75. So Saving and Redeeming 6 follows Shannon's older brother, Joey. And again, Chloe is just so good at mixing these terrible, dark situations and putting moments of light and like life into her character's journey. So was Saving 6, the third book, an absolute repeat of Binding and Keeping 13? Yes, but it was from Joey's perspective. And I think that because he has such a different experience from Shannon, you know, he's the head of the household because his father is an alcoholic, abusive person, and he's not working, obviously. And so because he's had to step into that role at 12 or 13, and he's just a much more strong character than Shannon, or he's strong in a different way. And just seeing his persistence and resilience in this situation, how he just loves his siblings so much, even though he may be a little resentful of them at times. And then seeing his relationship develop with Aoife throughout the entire story, it was just so beautiful. It was so cute. Like, I kind of liked Aoife and Joey better than Shannon and Johnny. Is that mean? I also thought it was interesting that in the third book, we get more perspective on Shannon and Joey's older brother. We see him when he's finally leaving. He's like, this is too much abuse. I gotta get out. And how that affected Joey, how that affected Shannon, because they were both old enough to remember Darren leaving. I think that was a really good addition. So even though like third book and the first half of the fourth book were pretty much the first and second book again, I think it was really good. You just get so much context to why Joey acts the way he is, how he fell into drug addiction, how he keeps getting into these situations, and you're just rooting for him to finally have someone in his life that will have the ability to get him help and get him out of this terrible cycle. I thought it was really touching. I think that Chloe's just really good at writing dark topics and then having the characters actually be real people. And this is kind of a spoiler for Redeeming Six, but Lizzie, I did not like you in the first two books, but yeah, you're a good woman. You're a good woman. Honestly, the last book was about to be a 5-star, but then, again, like I said, these books are set in 2005, so Gibbsy, who is one of Shannon's boyfriend's friends, he ends up saying something weird about Shannon to Johnny, and I was like, that's giving me the ick. So it became a 4.75, but very solid. So those were my favorite books of 2023. But I have to put some honorable mentions because there were some really, really good books that I read or that I think about, and I'm just like, you're not my favorite. I don't think about you that often. But when I saw you on my 2023 Goodreads wrap-up, I was like, that was a good time. That was a good time. So the first book I want to talk about is Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki. I read this back in February and I rated it 4 stars. And we followed the main character, Shizuka Satomi. So she made a deal with the demon to save her soul. She will basically recruit 7 prodigious violinists who will willingly sign away their soul to become amazing musicians. And then they will go to hell. And so she has to capture 7 of these musicians. And she's captured 6. So she's on her 7th when she comes across Katrina, who's a homeless young woman in the park. And she's utterly amazed. She says, that's my 7th soul. And she recruits her. So Shizuka ends up taking her in and helping her out, get her back on her feet. And she takes on almost a motherly role. And so you can see how that might make it hard for her to let Katrina give up her soul. Honestly, this book, as I've said for the last 5 books, this book was really good. I think it had such amazing LGBT plus representation, drawing light on the realities that some trans youth face. It also had refugee representation. So we have a character, Lon, who is an alien from another planet who is trying to escape something called the End Plague. And I personally can't speak on how well the representation was done, but I think it was important and she did a really great job, I think, to make the reader really feel how the characters are feeling. So if you don't necessarily have that experience, you have an understanding of the character struggles and perspectives. Okay, my next honorable mention is solely because I wanted to recommend this to someone multiple times, but I accidentally spoiled them on the ending because I thought they'll never read this book, and it has been a regret. The book is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This was a great book for it being on Kindle Unlimited. Araya, who's our main character, is a human who's raised by the vampire king in this world, Vincent, in hopes of winning the Kajari, which is a trial to the death. And the whole point of winning these trials is that you get granted a wish, and she's obviously going to wish that she's a vampire so that she's not so vulnerable in this world where she's basically food. You know what? I think, again, was it top tier? No, I'm not even going to say that. I'm not going to put it down. It was a good book. It's a fun time. It's not super intense fantasy, but I think the world building was done very well. I think the characters were pretty fleshed out. I think Araya was really built out to be a pretty good main character. Rain, who's the main love interest, he's like a shadowy bat boy. You know, he's there. What's there not to like? But I think the author did a really good job having the atmosphere really built up well. The world was built up very well. I think that there was a good explanation of the dynamics between all the different warring factions. It was a solid book, and I would recommend you give it a try. If you're in a reading slump especially, this book is a pretty quick read. You're gonna have a good time. So the last books I want to talk about are Magnolia Parks. Do I hate miscommunication? Yes. Yes, I do. I hate miscommunication. It's why I didn't like Happy Place by Emily Henry last year. But there's just something about the Magnolia Parks books. You go in already knowing that their relationship is so toxic, and that there is miscommunication, but in this world, it just makes them incredibly frustrating, but so real as characters, and you just want them to be together. They are like a car crash. You can't look away and you just have to know more. And you just want them to figure it out. Like, do I wish their maturity was a little higher? Yes. But that wouldn't make the series as interesting. And you know what? Everyone's developing at their own time. So it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I think Magnolia is such an interesting character because she just wants to be loved by everyone. And then BJ just has this issue where he impulsively cheats on his partner. And it's this whole issue. And like, I thought, wow, this is so stupid. This is so like, okay, whatever. But seeing Magnolia and BJ in the third book. Also, why is his name BJ? Like, that's such a weird name. Like, anyways. Seeing BJ in Magnolia in the third book, which is basically taking place right after the end of the first book. While I think, again, there's so much miscommunication, I see the reasons why it was all happening. Because when I finished Magnolia Parks, I thought, okay, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why is Magnolia act like this? Why did BJ cheat on her? Like, they're clearly like soulmates. They're just meant to be together, but they just can't make it work. It feels like something always just goes wrong. And I just feel like, was it just happening because plot? But like this explained so much. We see why BJ is the way he is, why he keeps cheating, and like we see Magnolia try to like rein in her issue of wanting to be loved all the time. And the ending, why are you doing that to us, Jessa? Why? And Daisy hates. I think I like Daisy more than I liked Magnolia as a person, but it did take me a while to finish this book as compared to these two. I don't know. Apparently, the next book is going to make me care about Julian a lot. After finishing this, I'm definitely rooting for Magnolia and BJ to make it work. I just feel like that's kind of crazy because I did not care for them being together at the end of the first book. I really didn't. Like I cared. I cared if they were together. But I was just like, there's so much work that needs to be done. Like, I don't think they can be. I just want Into the Dark to prove me wrong. I just want them to be happy. But I'm too scared to look at the page count of Into the Dark because something's gonna happen. Also, like, side note, I kind of hated the new covers, but Into the Dark kind of eats. I love the dark green and black. It's actually better than the illustrated cover, and I thought that was unexpected. Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you for listening. This was probably gonna be a very long video, but if you stayed for any duration, I'm very happy for listening. Let me know what book you read last year and are gonna be reading again this year. You thought it was so good. You were like, this gotta be a yearly read. It can't be anything else. Let me know. Drop it down below. Let me know what book you're rereading this year.